Hi, this is A. Wilson. That ain't even tells it like a TIL. If you like my video, please give a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Topic I'm going to talk to you today about is the Real Housewives of Potomac, Season 10, Episode 19, Reunion Part 2. The reunion started off where it left off, where Ashley and Wendy were arguing, and Ashley was telling Wendy at least she only has one social security number, and she don't have six or seven. And then Wendy saying 6 or 7, 6 or 7. We know ain't no 6 or 7, 6 or 7. She said yes, 6 or 6 or 7. Alias, alias. And she said, and she said, that's because you don't have no accomplishments. That's why you say what you think about me has more to do with you because you don't have any accomplishments. And then Ashley said, blank, I do have some accomplishments. You don't know what I got. And she said, well, you showed up. That's why you look down at me. And then Ashley said, wait a minute, wait a minute. We're not gonna never resolve this. Let's move on. Let's move on. And then uh, Ashley said, Andy, before we move on, can I speak? Can I say something? And he said, yeah. What is it? She said, you know, I gotta remember that I'm in a new group. That I'm in a new group. This is a new group. This is a new group of women. She said back in the day when we first started, we we would say we would say we would say nasty and messy things about people, and then we turn around and be friends. The next day they start showing them flashbacks. Where Karen called Gizelle uh, 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 a blank from a blank from that universe, and then they got and they showed all them things and stuff. And said the girls in these groups are too sensitive, too sensitive. Giselle gonna chime in and say, yeah, like the chin check and the catch, like the chin check and the catfish of it all. And then Angel chimed in and said, "Oh, so you're trying to reference me." She said, "Like you always do, like you always do." And baby, the look on Giselle's face, if look could kill, Angel would be on the floor, and stuff. It's like she thought that Angel was an easy target. And now that Angel is showing her true stuff, true colors, they don't like it. But when Angel first came on the show, or she was a lap dog Kiana is chin checking her, Kiana's doing that stuff. Now that she's showing her own personality, a whole lot of people start saying, "Ooh, good for Angel." Angel came out in the end. Angel this, Angel that. And like Angel said from Justice, she was trying to get to know the girls and stuff like that. And like I said in my previous video, Angel was going by what Kiana told her, and Kiana was trying to keep in good faith with Giselle. So she was going to pitch Giselle as a good character. But like I said in my other videos, I'm so glad that Angel realized for herself who is who and what is what, and not just kept going by what Kiana was saying. And so you could tell that Giselle is one of those people that don't like nobody to challenge her. She want people to bow down to her and do stuff. But what it is, she can't handle Angel. I saw that from the reunion. She could not handle Angel because Angel was giving her just as much of tough, rough energy as she was giving Angel. And she thought Angel was gonna back down. I was saying, "That's right, Angel, get her, get her." And so, and so he said, "Well, yeah, let's move on, let's move on." He said, "Kiana, you know, you know your story, this secret. You moving back in with Greg, and you and Greg back making up, and they showed Kiana's package." And then he said, "Well, Greg finally did go to the jewelry shop and go shopping." And so she said, yeah, he went shopping. He said, but Kiana, the fans are so mad because he didn't buy you a ring. She said, we're not here to please the fans and the public. We know what's real. We know what's what and stuff like that. He said, but he only gave you a picture frame. And so she said, yeah, give me a picture frame. And he said, what's that he said, I got to show you something. He said, what is it you got? What is it you got? Andy was so scared. He thought that girl had maybe, I don't know, brought some kind of bomb or some kind of strange stuff. She said, I'm just bringing, she put out, oh, he said, oh. And then And then Gizelle said, "Yeah, what is it? Was it?" And then when she sneaked it from under the pillow, it was a picture frame. And Gizelle said, "Oh, it's just a picture frame." And then Andy said, "Yeah, a picture frame. Why'd you bring a picture frame?" She said, "I brought the picture frame because it was close to my heart, and it was something that Greg bought me." And then Andy said, "Gizelle, what do you think about it?" She said, and then they showed a clip of her saying, "Well, he not gonna never put a ring on it. Why he gonna put a ring on it when he get in the car for free, everything for free?" He said, "Gizelle, do you still think that?" She said, "Yeah, I still think that. I think but he bought the ring." And Giselle said, I still think that Greg is not going to marry you and Greg is not going to buy your ring." She said, "Well, I don't care what people think about my relationship. It didn't just me and Greg know about the relationship." And then Angel tried to chime in and say, "Well, the love is there. I know Greg loves you. Let me talk about my relationship." And she said, "Well, okay." And stuff, and I said I didn't like that either. The way she tried to do, Angel in front of the group and stuff when Angel was trying to defend her, and stuff like that. And so, Kiana, to me, I don't know, maybe Gizelle put a bug in her ear or the producer somebody, but it's like every scene she was overacting and getting all what you call getting all upset and stuff. And so, and so she said, "Eventually, we're gonna get everything together. We're gonna get everything together." And Andy was saying, "Kiana, what was the problem that you had with Wendy and stuff?" She said, "Well, the problem I had with Wendy, well, Wendy pretended like she was my friend on camera, and off camera she wasn't." At the NAACP award, she could have spoke to me. We saw each other and stuff, and then and then Wendy said, "You wanted me to speak to you when I was already up on the stage, up on the podium, getting ready to say my speech, and you wanted me to holler out, 'Hey, Kiana.'" She said, "You could have acknowledged me, and some other people do it. Other people do it, and stuff like that." And Wendy said, "I didn't even take this picture, but the fan sent this to me, and they saw us hugging after the event, and they were saying, 'What is Kiana talking about?'" Kiana said, "I got a picture too. I got a picture." Baby Kiana showed us that fuzzy picture, and Andy looked at it. He said, "Well, the venue looked nice and pretty." And she said, "Yeah." And Wendy showed her a photo of her and Kiana hugging and all white and stuff. He said, "Well, Wendy did hug you. Wendy did that." See, that's what I'm talking about, Andy. That was really nothing. But she was kind of mean to me. And so, and so, uh, and so Andy said, Kiana, what was your problem with Stacy?" And she said, "Well, yeah, Stacy said that she wanted to be my friend and stuff like that." And then she got to talking about me, and then Stacy said, "I didn't talk about you." Said Stacy, I just told what you said or what I heard you said and stuff like that. And she said it wasn't really nothing. So you just wanted to have a moment with me. And I said, "That's right, Stacy. Put Kiana in her place." Kiana was just following along with Gizelle, just like Tia and the rest of them, and she really had no problem with with Stacy and what happened. That fell flat. And then Andy said, "What was your problem with Tia?" And she said, "Well, I really didn't have too much of a problem with Tia. Tia said a little something about me, but behind the scenes, me and Tia made up." And then he said, and then he said, "Okay." He said, "Okay." He said, "Ashley." He said, "Ashley, you finally moved on to Ashley." He said, finally, Ashley, you finally got your divorce after all these years, and you had a divorce party." She said, "Yeah, I had a divorce party." They showed her divorce party, whatever you want to call it. And then he said, "Ashley, this is a fan question," and they were saying that they really like you and they really like the part with you and your sister was on there. It's really touching and stuff. She said, "Yeah, she came to me after her daddy had those problems and stuff like that." And so that's why I kind of brought on camera to film with me. He said, "Well, how's she doing now?" Said, oh, she's doing good. She's in college and she's doing everything. And then Andy said, what about her dad? And she said, well, I can't speak on other people's stuff and other people's problems. All I know is that I think he's in rehab. And Andy said, okay, Ashley. He said, you know, you've been having a lot going on with, uh, with your situationship with Josh. How's that going now? She talking about, me and Josh, we still go out, we have dates and all that kind of stuff and stuff like that. And then so Andy said, any of the ladies, how do you feel about the relationship with that that Ashley had with Josh? Wendy chimed in and said, she did that man wrong. She did that man wrong. She did that man very, very wrong. She uh she did that man very, very, very bad. She did that man she did that was she did that man bad. And then Stacy said, yeah, she embarrassed him. She embarrassed him on national TV and stuff like that. And we didn't like that. And we didn't like that. And so, uh, uh, and so, uh, she said, "Well, what it is, I'm going to explain that." And then so Tia chimed in and said, "Well, I met Josh too. I met Josh's thing. He seemed like a nice guy to me, a nice guy to me. So I was surprised that the day I broke up and said, well, it was, Andy, I'm going to explain the situation because it wasn't all what people saw on TV, it wasn't all what it seemed. What it is, uh, we were supposed to go on a date that night, and what it was, he didn't want to film that night because he told me he had something to do. I had to go to work and stuff. So I told him since he couldn't film, and I said, "Girl, you sitting up there lying. They ain't had nothing to do with no filming. That man had been filming you all most of this year and half of last year. So we already know that was a lie, Ashley. You just didn't want that man because he didn't have the money you got." And like you said in your confession, you want your old white man. You even though you would say white man, you want your old sugar daddy to take care of you. And I'm looking at, girl, you already had a sugar daddy to take care of you with with your husband. And you see how that came out. So I'm like, Ashley, girl, you better get on with that life. And then he said, yeah, Ashley, what about the Sharice of it all? You and Sharice's son, you said y'all kind of dated or something. She said, nah, we kind of, it was just a kiss, it was just a kiss. And when they said, no, you didn't say that watch was happening live. And on watch what happened live, you implied that there was something more, it was something more. And she said, well, I did imply that, but it was nothing, but it wasn't nothing more. After you had sit up there and lied again, you was all over the internet talking about how involved you was and stuff like that. And then she said, well, I thought everything was okay because Sharice would always tell me I was gonna be her future daughter-in-law. And then she gonna go around on whole press to her talking about she didn't like it. And then Andy say, well, what do y'all ladies think about it? And then Wendy said, if I knew Sharice's son as a child, and even though he was a grown man now, I would still look at him as a child because that's where I met him at a child. And then Ashley gonna tell me, well, he's 27 years old now. And then Wendy said, I don't care if he was 24, 26, whatever age he is. That's not right, Ashley. That's not right. That was your friend and co-worker's son. Well, like I said, and then Andy looked kind of funny. And then Gizelle said, child did say, well, Ashley is right. Sharice did man like she didn't have no problem with it. And she did kept joking around about Ashley could be her daughter-in-law, Ashley could be her daughter-in-law, and stuff like that. And so, and so, Wendy said, "I'm sorry, but to me that is disgusting. That's mean." And then Stacy said, "Yeah, that show is like that." And then next thing you know, he switched to the next scene. He said, Ashley, we're gonna move on. He said, Tia, people really did like the scene with you and your half sister or whatever. And she said, yeah, but my father died and stuff. And I found out about her late in life. It was kind of like right after my father died. I found out about her. I looked her up and stuff. And so I just wanted to get to know her a little bit, get to know her a little bit. and stuff like that. And then Gizelle chimed in and said, "Yeah, but when you lose a parent, especially a family member, that is kind of hard for you to go on to." And then so Andy said, "Gizelle, what's happening with your father's will and stuff like that?" She said, "Well, the will has already been done." She said, "But what it is, his wife got all the money, and then and nothing went to my daughter for generational wealth." And then some people are saying you were just mad because you didn't get the money for your daughters and yourself. She said, "No, it ain't about no money. It's about his legacy. My dad used to be." My dad used to be a social activist and stuff like that, a political social activist, and that's what I want. I want to keep all this memorabilia and show it to my kids and stuff like that. I was saying, Gizelle, that might be right to a certain extent, but you want that money. You want that money hands down. Then you're gonna try to say the woman was evil and didn't even know the woman, and stuff like that. And so it switched back. He said, "We're gonna take a break, and we're gonna take a break." So they took a break, and then Jazzy came out. And then Stacy said, "Ooh, she got three people holding her dress. She needs three people to hold her dress." Wendy said, that's right, Jazzy. Come on out here with that pretty dress and long dress." And baby, like I said, if looks could kill, Jazzy would have been on the floor too. Giselle had her rolling her eyes at Jazzy, had her head down. All guys, I said, "What's going on with Giselle?" I said, "It's like everybody who came out and Andy gave him a compliment, baby. She looked kind of funny and stupid. And it was like, oh, them ugly looks on her face. And then them Velcro's veins and in her leg. She kept trying to cross her leg on the other side. You could still see it. You could still see the Velcro veins on the left side, but it was less. When she crossed her legs back to the right side, you could see it all again. And so I said, Giselle just needs to not even cross her legs at all. But anyway, back to the show. And so he said, "Jazzy, welcome to the show." Jazz said, "Yeah, thank you, Andy. Welcome to you." Say, "How you doing?" Say, "I'm doing all right." So they got through with the pleasantries and all that type of stuff. And he said, Jazzy, he said, "Jazzy, what was the problem between you and Kiana?" She said, "What it was, I thought Kiana, because you said you and Kiana was friends. I thought Kiana was my friend." She said, "But somebody told me that Kiana was saying something about about my husband and my marriage, her about my husband wasn't a list football player. His ranking and thing was real low." And she was saying, "Well, that's what I heard. That's what I heard, that he was more like I don't know, a linebacker or a linebacker or something like that." And she was saying, "Well, he do makes money. He does make a whole lot of money and stuff like that." And then so Angel chimed in and said, "Well, he's still a popular football player. He's still a big football player, no matter what position he played." And so she said that's one of the problems that I have with what you call, and so with Kiana said, "Well, you really had a good problem about me." And then you said that I read my had no problem with you because you said this. She said, "Yeah, you one thing about it. At least I ain't still Greg for at least I ain't still Greg from his ex-wife. I didn't steal Greg from his ex-wife." She said, "Yes, you did. Yes, you did." She said, "No, you didn't. You don't know what you talking about. You know what you talking about. You in that cheap dress." And I was saying, "Kiana, why you tell that girl?" And she said, "Oh, this is not no cheap dress. This is a well-known black designer." She said the name. And she talking about, "What you talking about?" And she said, "Your dress don't look that good. What you talking about? This is luxury I got on. Like I said, my condo, my house, my this. Look at my body." Boy, Gizelle was looking all kind of funny. Andy was looking all kind of funny. And one only thing I didn't like, Andy kept letting, because she's kind of friends with Gizelle. Andy just kind of let Kiana run the show at that little point. He wouldn't let Jazz get a word in edgewise. Jazz said, "Calm down, calm down. I'm going to explain why I said that." She said, "Man, he was still married to his wife when he met up to." No, they was already separated and getting ready to get divorced. She said, That's not what I heard." And said, "Well, I don't know what you heard, Jazz, but that's the truth. That's the truth." And then she got jumping up and shaking her hands and on all kind of stuff. And then Gizelle said, "What's going on?" And then Wendy got to laughing. And then Ashley, "Ooh, it's getting heated in here, it's getting heated in here." And Andy didn't say nothing. Then Giselle said, "Time out, time out." And she said, calm down, Kiana, time out, time out." And she said, "Yeah." And Kiana sat down for a while. And then he said, "Jazzy, what was your problem with Stacy?" She said, "Well, Stacey pretended like she wanted to come to my wedding and told me she had something going on. But then Wendy told me that she wasn't going to come at all, and she kind of coached her into coming. And that's what I was mad about, because she had me believing that she wanted to come and we were friends. And she was saying, well, I did have a lot going on, and what it was, your wedding was the same day of me opening my CDB business. And what it is, I had to push some stuff back just to come to your wedding to support you." She said, "But you could have said that in the first place. What you call it? You really didn't want to come. Really didn't want to come." That's what Wendy said. And so so that's why I was upset with you. And then she told me, that was really nothing to be said of. She said it was because you pretended you wanted my friends. They said you just wanted to have a moment, just like now you just want to have a moment and stuff like that. And so he said, "Okay, let's move on. We're going to take another break." And then he introduced Monique. And to me, Monique shouldn't have even been on there. That was the worst part. And she going to come in there talking about she had a tape and then it went out. And I was saying Monique was setting up that line just like everybody else. This reunion, some people say this reunion wasn't that good. And I ain't like when Tia tried to insinuate that Jazzy was the aggressive one. No, it was Kiana who was the aggressive one, and stuff like that. I like the part two of the reunion just as much, but I think they should have cut down Ashley's package so much, because Ashley had too much of a package and it ran over. And stuff. I think I would have rather seen more of Jazzy and Kiana. That's all I have for this video. This is Abe Wesley. That ain't even tells it like a TI is. I'm out.